Well, good evening, everybody, and thank you for joining us on this webinar. It is a continuation of the content collaboration between Property Tribes and our friends and partners at Lendlord. And we're kind of following on from a previous webinar, which proved extremely popular in terms of subject matter. And it was basically looking at how data can help solve landlord conundrums. And so we're going to do a kind of part 2 of that this evening. And what Avram and I have done is to look at some of the kind of trending topics and some of the things that crop up on Property Tribes from time to time, and actually use those as almost like mini case studies to demonstrate how the Lendlord software can help you make informed and accurate decisions and fully understand the performance of your portfolio. So Avram, I think it's probably just worth mentioning again before we get going that Lendlord is going to be at the Property Investor Show at Excel on the 15th and 16th of October. That's Excel in London. Avram and the team will have a stand there, and Avram and I are also doing a live presentation together, and also I am doing a panel debate on holiday lets. It's free to attend, and we would love you to come along and say hello in person. And I'm sure, like us, you're just desperate to get out and start meeting people again in person and start forging those relationships which we all know are so vital and important in property. So if you haven't already registered for the Property Investor Show at Excel, please do. It's the major gathering of the Property Tribes, and we'll hopefully see you there. So our first kind of landlord conundrum, we've combined 2 things, because a lot of landlords want to know, should I buy with cash or should I buy with a mortgage? And it's a very interesting conundrum to have a look at. And we had another question of what to do with £60,000 if that's all you had to invest. So we're going to combine these 2 together and just talk a little bit about that. Avram, we all know that leveraged buy-to-let is the true way to wealth in property. But having said that, there can be advantages to having an unencumbered property, and also, you might want to choose just one in your portfolio to have unencumbered, but we'll talk about that in a minute. But Avram's going to give us a quick demonstration of buying a property for £60,000 cash and what the metrics look like for that, and then we'll talk about using that £60,000 as a deposit on a much higher value property. So Avram, do you want to go forward with the £60,000 cash and just see how that works out?
Sure. So I think that there are so many strategies on what is the best way to purchase a new property, and I think the best thing is to use tools like Lendlord, like the deal analyzer of Lendlord, to understand the different scenarios. You can save different deals, and then you can compare them. And I will show you how to do it basically, and we will use the use case from the Property Tribes post on how to invest 60K.
Yeah, it's financial modeling, isn't it, Avram?
Oh, definitely. I think numbers never lie. And using the deal analyzer also give you the opportunity to be more conservative, to see what is going to happen at risk, etc. So I will go to the deal analyzer. The best way is to go from the dashboard. You have a button, analyze your deal, or to go from the menu to the deal analyzer. So the first thing on the deal analyzer, and we, by the way, released a beta version of a new mobile deal analyzer that we might do a webinar just for that in the near future. Start with an address. Why an address? You don't have to put an address. You can just put a name that of very generic deal that you want to analyze. But if you have the address, then Landlord will fetch for you some important information like the EPC level of this property. And if it's a level that you should increase, you can see the link to the assessment of how much it will cost you to improve the EPC of this property. This is something new that we've added, and you will have the ability to add it to the costs of the deal I will show in a minute. We also fetch the property type, the internal area, and some information about the postcode in terms of average yield and the 5-year growth. And there is a dedicated page to analyze the postcode. Now let's take the use case of the 60K. So Vanessa says 60K cash. I would start with the rough estimation of what is the purchase price, how much you are going to offer on this property. Let's put 200K.
No, this would be £60,000 cash.
Okay, so it's okay.
It's a cash purchase at £60,000, yeah.
So it's without a mortgage, you mean?
So no mortgage.
You put 60K just in cash. Okay.
Yep.
So in this case, you need to find a very low price property, yes?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay. So.
And your rent on that property is going to be probably somewhere in the region of £400 a month.
Okay, so let's start with 40 and then see if we can increase. So this is the minimum offer that I want to put now. £400 or 350, let's say, in terms of rental income. Then I would put also the closing costs. And this is important because usually you will pay the same closing costs no matter what is the size of the deal. There might be, of course, changes, but just to be conservatives, let's put 500.
Yes, interestingly, somebody asked about what is a typical conveyancing cost, and I think a big thing to understand about that is it does make a difference whether it's leasehold or freehold. If it's leasehold, it's probably going to be a little bit more. So if I was using the deal analyzer for my conveyancing costs, I would probably put in about £1,000 for a freehold property and maybe £1,250 for a leasehold property, just as rough estimates. It does depend on the type of firm you use. The big, well-known firms charge a fair bit more than just a standard conveyancer. So, but for the purposes of the deal analyzer, I would recommend £1,000 for freehold and £1,250 for leasehold.
Okay, so I put like an average or like.
Yeah, because there'll be searches and other bits and pieces, won't there? Okay,
so the total costs are 44K. So you have also the stamp duty. And if it's like an additional property, it's not the first property, you need to pay already some stamp duty. If not,
there's no stamp duty on property under 40,000, I don't think, is there?
Okay, so if so, I will just change it to 0 here.
So we'll call this your first purchase.
Yeah, it can be your first purchase. We should change this calculation. So I think that I have more room. So basically, so you say if I purchase the entire property in cash, so I will take the cash investment to 100%. So I have a room to 60. So basically I can even put an offer on a property on 55.
They may just decide that staying in Germany and France is probably the better.
Okay. So here basically we don't have any mortgage, so we can also take away the mortgage fees. So basically I have room to put more on the property. So let's take it to 56. Okay. So now after I put these numbers, I can start to review the first 3 metrics and the long-term metrics. So what is going to be my net cash flow? The cash on cash here is basically on the entire deal. So cash on cash, we take the net cash flow on your cash investment, and this is basically the yield of the cash. The gross yield is the entire rental income on the purchase costs, and the net yield is just the net cash flow on your entire purchase costs. In the first year, I will lose money, if I see it correctly. And you have the other metrics. I want now to add also something important is the monthly operating cost. So Vanessa, for this deal, would you use an agent to manage a property? If so, we need to take it into account. It can be like 10%. There are different rates for management fees. I would also put some a landlord insurance premium that I need to put. There is service charge, ground rent, like maintenance. Vanessa, any idea on like what would you put on this size of deal in terms of other monthly costs?
Sorry, I've just been distracted. One of the cats has got stuck down the back of the bed. Get down, sorry. It's just been one of those days. Your monthly costs obviously going to be your agent's fees, circa 10% of the rent. You've got your insurance cost, which, you know, if you work with like Property Tribe's insurance partner or Landlord insurance partner, Alan Boswell Group, you can spread over 10 to 12 months, which is definitely helpful with cash flow. What else? That's pretty much it at the moment, I would say.
I put just some conservative numbers of like 25% on maintenance in average and some other monthly costs. Let's put it 30. So this is basically will take, you know, perhaps because it's not a big flat, perhaps you can reduce it a bit. Then I would go to the long-term assumptions, and here, and this is related to the first topic in terms of is the tenanted property or not. In our deal analyzer, you can put some assumptions about the occupancy rate. So how much vacancy you think this property will have over the years. 92% means that is like 1 month a year of vacancy.
I think that's about right.
Yeah, it's very conservative. There are people that will prefer to put more, prefer to be more conservative. But if you want to see the numbers with these conservative assumptions, you can check it here. Then you need to decide or like to see what will happen to your metrics in terms if you hold the property for more years or less years. Then you can also put some assumptions in terms of property appreciation, rent appreciation, and annual inflation. And here you go. I can go now to the prospect report. So here is a summary of the deal. I can see all the details that I entered on the left side. I can see the metrics on the right side. And I can also see the development of the value of the equity. And we will test it against a mortgage deal. So here we basically bought everything in cash. And you can also see the development of the cash flow, the breakdown of your monthly expenses, and the holding period breakdown in terms of the net cash flow and the net operating income over the years. You can also export this and save it as a PDF and share with whomever you want. And you can also take a look at the postcode information, but we'll do it later. So let's do the following exercise.
Well, before we move on, Avram, can I just mention that we have a fantastic thread on Property Tribes called The Power of Owning a Property with No Mortgage on It, or an unencumbered property, to use the correct terminology. And Nick's going to pop the link on the chat for you. It's very interesting. It was written by a very well-known mortgage broker, a lovely lady named Lisa Orme. And she has always thought it's really good to have one unencumbered property in your portfolio. And I know this might go against some of the commentary that we see on Property Tribes about, you know, the power of leverage buy to let. But Lisa's a big fan of an unencumbered property because it essentially is like a fallback position for you. It's kind of great to have just the one property that's unencumbered because you can bridge against it. So that's a benefit of it. And that then actually allows you to perhaps achieve a very low money left in type of deal. If you buy for cash, add value, then refurbish out. So you can use an unencumbered property to bridge against. And do read Lisa's thread. It was written actually in 2015, but it still holds true today. That it's very valuable to have just the one unencumbered property in your portfolio to use as kind of a way to expand your portfolio. So it's well worth having a read of that thread. So we've seen how the metrics stack up if it's unencumbered.
Yes. So
now, obviously,
yeah.
if you use that 60,000 in a leveraged position as a deposit on a much higher value property, then, well, yes, it means you can buy a much higher value property, and the metrics will change quite significantly, because essentially with around 60,000, you're probably looking at buying a property at around the 200,000 mark. Now, this kind of chimes back to my thread about, I don't know if any of you have been reading it, but it's called Quality, Not Quantity is the Future of Buy-to-Let. And it's really born out of my thinking that going forwards, because of the fallout of COVID and so forth, that affluent areas are going to survive and be more robust than shall we say less affluent areas. So if you have that £60,000 and you are of the same opinion of me that it's quality rather than quantity, you may choose to put that £60,000 in as a deposit on one good quality property rather than splitting it into 230 lots to buy two lower quality properties. But it really does depend on your view, your appetite for risk, your knowledge of the area that you're buying and so forth. But I think it's certainly food for thought that going forward that quality is going to be more robust than quantity, should we say, or lower value properties in less affluent areas. But that's just my opinion. You may not agree, and if you don't, go on to Property Tribes and say why not. That's what it's there for, to tease out all the issues surrounding these kind of thought processes. So Avram's now popped in the purchase price of 200,000.
Yeah, so let's
and then we'll see what happens to the figures.
Yeah, so let's analyze this deal and then we can compare both of them. So here I will put also the mortgage fees. So I put 200 as the purchase price, put estimated rent of 1,200. You can use our estimation based on the postcode using property data API and get some estimation about how much the rent should be. And use this number or use your own estimation. Okay, but I put here, I'm not sure about the postcode. So because of the price, I will put just this amount for this exercise. So now we have only 60. So let's say if we put 60 in cash, okay, so it takes us exactly to the 75% loan to value. So this is good. I will now run a search with our mortgage search to find a mortgage for this deal. So this is something that very important. Landlord is connected to the relevant deals that are now out there in terms of rates. There might be a problem with my profile, but perhaps it's it's 75%. So I will take this deal of the Mortgage Works, 2.99% interest only. Let's put some operation costs, landlord insurance, maintenance, and other monthly costs. Then I will also change the occupancy rate to 92%. Just putting assumptions, but you can use our postcode information to make better assumptions to the long term. And now I'm going to save it with the mortgage. So now, Vanessa, what I'm going to do is I'm going to my portfolio and I will deselect my existing properties and I'm going to select the two prospects that we just saved, the cash only and with a mortgage. So here you can see I will going to change to the performance view, and I can compare the cash flow. So you can see like the cash only bill, I'm getting 2,700 in cash, net cash. So even if I take the mortgage, it looks like if I leverage, I get more in terms of cash. Also, the return on the cash on cash is higher. The 12-month ROI is lower, I see, for the leverage deal. The cap rate is a bit higher. 10-year equity is very interesting, and I can go back to the deal analyzer, to the prospect report to see the development of the equity, and we will change to capital and interest after that just to see the difference. Let's go here again. So basically, this is the way you can then change the numbers and see, okay, so if I change this to this, if I reduce the market rating cost, or if I take a mortgage with a lower interest rate, what happens to my deal. And you can
okay,
also,
well, Elton's asked on the chat, would we recommend interest only over capital and interest repayment? That's actually the topic that we're coming on to very shortly. Just want to point out something about leveraged buy-to-let. With the £60,000 purchase cash, let's say property values were going up 10% per annum, just to keep it simple, because I ain't that good at maths, then you would be enjoying 10% on 60,000. But if you have a leveraged property where you've used a small amount of money, your deposit, to control a much larger valued asset, then you would be earning 10% on 200,000. Now, if you do the maths, you can see that the leveraged position allows you to earn a lot more via capital appreciation. And on top of that, then you get into, as time goes by and property is a long-term investment, then you start to benefit from compounding. So it really does start to ramp up a lot more on the leveraged property than on the property that you've bought for cash. But as ever, and as we've said, there could be a good reason to have one unencumbered property in your portfolio. Use it, as we mentioned, for bridging and to achieve very low money in deals. And most landlords, of course, do go for leveraged buy-to-let, and they do tend to go for interest only, and we'll explain that in a bit more detail when we get to that. Abraham, where do you want to go next? To the tenanted and non-tenanted?
By the way, I put the 10% that you said on the two deals. So
yes, that would be interesting.
And then when I compare them, you can see that the long-term values are much higher for the leveraged. So you can see the equity is almost 3 times, and also the total ROI in 10 years if you leverage the deal.
So one of the other landlord conundrums that crops up on Property Tribes is, should you buy a tenanted property or sell a tenanted property? And of course, you can use Lendlord to run the numbers for that. Essentially, if you buy a tenanted property, I regard that as one of the lowest risk options out there. And as I keep saying, and forgive me if you've heard me say this before, the risks have been massively amplified due to COVID, particularly with tenant profiles. So to buy a tenanted property, well, first of all, you get income from day one of ownership. Secondly, you can check the payment history of the tenant to see if they've paid their rent on time on a regular basis. Thirdly, you can check how the tenant is keeping the property, if they're looking after it. And of course, the other thing is that because the property is tenanted, the tenant is most likely happy with the property and is not seeking to have any upgrades or anything done. So you can actually earn income from day one, and perhaps if the property does need a facelift, you can wait until that tenant departs to undertake the work. So there are many, many advantages to buying a tenanted property. particularly if you're a newbie, and even more so if you're buying outside of your area and that you don't know the area very well. And one way to find a tenanted property is to visit Property Tribe's partner Vesta, which is the leading platform for buying and selling of tenanted properties, portfolios, HMOs and blocks of flats. So there's lots of interesting deals on there, and they're all laid out with all the ROI and all the calculations done for you. And you know the exact rent that you're going to be getting. So this is why it's so great, Avram, in terms of the deal analyzer. Rather than kind of estimating or guessing the rent, you can actually put the exact rent in. Clearly, if you're earning income from day one, you're not having any voids while you're waiting to tenant the property because it's bought tenanted. And obviously, if you have a void, you know, or you buy a vacant property, you've got to fill it. While you're waiting to fill that property, you will be paying the mortgage if you have one, you will be paying the council tax, you will be paying the standing utilities. And if it took you 2 or 3 months to fill that property, it could actually impact quite negatively on your deal. And again, you can actually model that using Lendlord. Anything you want to say about that, Avram?
Yeah, I think this is right. Just when you get a tenanted property, you have more information. So also the level of confidence can be higher. So basically the occupancy rate is more clear. You know exactly how much rent to put in your calculations. So yeah, definitely.
Indeed.
So now we can try to switch the capital interest and interest only just to see this, and then we can jump on to the next topic. So I will take the same deal, and I'm just going to change it from interest only to capital and interest. So the way to do it is to go to the loan details section, change to capital and interest, and basically the figures will be changed. You can go now to the prospect report. And here you can
Peter's just asking how we would model an initial void, and we could do that on the occupancy rate, couldn't we? You could do it over a year, and you could just model it on that occupancy rate.
Yes.
So you could do 100% occupancy for a tenanted property, and maybe check with the local agent what the kind of average time is for letting that type of property in that area. And if they say kind of 2 months or something, you can factor that in via the occupancy rate.
Yes, I think the best thing will be like to do like an average, because if you want to still like to see what is going to be for the long term. So just the initial void is something that we will be supporting. So currently we just need to do the averaging. So if it's like a 10 years, you need to take it into account and put a lower occupancy rate in your calculation. So just to complete the example, in order to check capital and interest, only just change this and you can see the changes. So if I choose interest only, I can see that my long-term ROI, for instance, is 376. This is because we put your 10%, Vanessa. It's not sure it will be like every year 10%. Just for the example that we did.
It could be more the way the market's performing at the moment. Okay. There's the predictions of how house prices are going to continue to appreciate are actually really quite astonishing. We couldn't have imagined this a year ago. I can tell you, I just can't believe how the market is performing. And the general consensus is that it's going to continue into 2022 and beyond. And this is why it's so important to analyze your deals accurately and get accurate comparables and valuations, because it would be very easy to be stung in this market and to maybe overpay or be lulled into some false sense of security. So you need to really be extra diligent with your research in these kind of market conditions, because they, as many people have said, it could just be like an energy away, and I can't really see how it is going to be sustainable. We've actually got a thread on Property Tribes at the moment, which has been trending about, is buy-to-let really sustainable? Because we've had house price appreciation, we've had rental appreciation, we've had ridiculous tenant demand breaking records. So it's very, very happy days at the moment, but we have to be cautious, and they may not last. So this is why deal analysis is even more important post-COVID.
Yes, definitely. So when I put interest only, I can see it's 85%. If I change to capital and interest, then it goes up to 90. But it really depends on the deal. So you can do the same that we did, like save one deal with interest only, save another with capital interest, and then you can compare them on my portfolio one by one. And again, you can use the prospect report. And usually if it's capital interest, you will see your mortgage balance going down, your equity going up over the years. So basically you gain equity not just because of property appreciation, but also because you are repaying the mortgage capital as well. So basically it's a different kind of deal. From what we know, the statistics is that landlords do mainly interest-only deals. But with the deal analyzer, you can definitely assess both options.
Yes, I think, it is one of these questions that crops up time again, with good reason. And it's a good question to ask about whether to have an interest-only or repayment mortgage. And most landlords will tell you to go for interest only, because the monthly repayment is significantly less than if you had capital and interest. Therefore, your net cash flow month on month is greater. You need net cash flow to stay in the game long term. And also, many mortgages have the facility to overpay by up to 10% per annum. So you could have an interest-only mortgage and then opt to overpay by up to 10% per annum on a capital basis to reduce your capital. I think one of the key things that I always say is that the way it's calculated of how much interest and how much capital gets paid off, it's the interest that's paid off first. Oh. So for about the first 10 years of any mortgage, you will see a very, very minor reduction, if any, in the actual capital that you owe. So on that basis, is there any point in having a repayment mortgage when for the first 10 years it's actually not going to benefit you in any way, and it's going to reduce the monthly net cash flow? Not to mention, as I said, that you can actually elect to overpay up to 10% per annum on most interest-only buy-to-lets. So my option would always be to go for interest only. And I would also suggest that you read the terms and conditions of your mortgage, or when you're applying for a mortgage, make sure you know what the overpayment option is. I think it's really healthy to think about, well, if I have some excess cash, I might pay down that mortgage. And it could be that you want to pay down a mortgage to get a better rate on that mortgage. So that could be an option to refinance another property, or indeed use that unencumbered property we talked about to actually pay down a mortgage, and then remortgage and get a better deal, and maybe reduce your monthly payment a little bit as a result. And I have to say, there's some absolutely incredible deals around at the moment. I don't know if anybody's noticed, but there's a thread on Property Tribes. I'll just grab it for you, where I've been actually curating all the rate decreases by buy-to-let lenders, and there's a real competition between the lenders for buy-to-let business, which I think again is a positive market indicator that the lenders are willing to lend at such low rates. I don't know again how long it will last. So again, it's a window of opportunity to grab some cheap money. So if anybody's sitting on the fence there wondering whether they should get into buy-to-let, I would say right now there's some of the cheapest money around that you've ever had access to. So do bookmark that thread. I've just popped on the link there, because every day literally I've been updating it saying mortgage lenders are dropping their rates. And Avram, again, you know, using the finance hub and sourcing a mortgage via Lendlord, of course you'll have access to all the very, very latest product releases, and you'll be able to see the kind of rates that you can stack your deals on. So this is another reason why Lendlord's almost like a jigsaw puzzle that fits everything together, and you can jump from each piece and then fit them together and see how it's all working. And the more people jump around on it and use the different features, I think the more you'll see how powerful this software is.
Yes, so you can always go to the mortgage search page, even if it's independent to a deal that you analyze, and search for a specific mortgage based on the parameters that you can change, and you can see the rates. It's very important to take, so for this, for instance, this looks very good rate, but the fees are higher. So it's important to take a look on the fees, because basically this rate, for instance, this is for 2 years.
Yes, and many lenders will allow you to add the fees to the mortgage. So do obviously factor that into your calculations as well, because your mortgage will actually be a little bit more than the actual amount you've borrowed if you add the fees to it.
Exactly. Yes.
Now, Elton has asked if there is the maximum amount of property you're allowed to have an interest-only mortgage on from a risk profiling perspective. It really depends on the lender, to be honest. If you've got 4 or less properties, you're going to find it a lot easier to access products, because once you have if you have 3 or less properties, because once you have 4 or more properties, you are determined to be a portfolio landlord by the lenders, and a new set of parameters come into play, which is called the PRA, which is how lenders assess portfolios and loan to values across entire portfolios, and so on and so forth. And again, if you're buying in a personal name compared to a limited company, it will be different in that respect as well. So as far as I'm aware, most lenders are happy with interest only. There's no maximum amount of interest only products you can have. All lenders will want to know what your repayment vehicle is, whether it is to sell the property or to remortgage it at a later date, or whatever. So you must have that in your mind when you're taking out that particular product, that you know how you are going to repay it. Because obviously, if you take interest only, at the end of your mortgage term, it will be the same amount repayable as at the beginning of your mortgage term. So you need to be very clear on that. Yeah, we can see some rates popping up here on the Finance Hub. Very, very competitive, aren't they, Avram? I remember the days of 5-6%.
Yes, definitely. And the good thing is, what we do in Lendlord, this example of this demo is that with only 3 properties. But if you have more than 4 properties, as you mentioned, Vanessa, the platform will analyze the lender's criteria for you. So we will eliminate product that you don't have access to. Also, if I change now, so let's increase the rate, but also increase the LTV. Let's even increase it more. So here, basically, we'll see like different rates. So it really depends also the leverage of the deal. So you see that the rate basically now a bit higher because the loan to value is higher. The rental income is also something that the lenders test. So if there is not enough rental to pay the loan at risk, you will see some lenders that will not lend the money, or the rates will be higher. And it's also, if you have more than 4 properties, it might be also relevant. Some lender will stress as the entire portfolio. So we do this job for you. You can check it on the My Portfolio Available Lenders. So you see the ICR number is basically the stress test of the entire portfolio. And you can see, so in this case, I can also update the personal income. I can put something, just to pass it, then I can.
It's interesting because before Lendlord came along, I used to stack my deals based solely on the rental income, because to my mind, a buy-to-let property is worth what borrowing the rental income will support. And if you stack your deals like that, Lendlord will show you if you actually need to put in a bigger deposit, because most people want to minimize the deposit they put in, and the typical deposit in this day and age is around 25%. But there's a couple of products out there up to 85% now, so you'd be more highly leveraged. But it is interesting that things that I used to do manually sort of 10 years ago, I can do it all on Lendlord now, and it will tell me the exact cash injection that I need to put into that property. And that in turn helps you understand if you think it stacks up for you. So it actually works on the calculation of each product, doesn't it, Abraham?
Yes, yeah, definitely.
Some products are a little bit more lenient than others, and this again is why it's so useful to have access to all these prospective products, because you'll be able to look at the features of them and see how they work on your deal.
Yes, and again, the baseline is just to make sure that your data is up to date. So if you, this is put like another demo account with more properties. So if you put the entire details of the properties and you make sure that the owners are correct, then you can see that how, if I apply with a partner, how it changed my circumstances, and then I can see which lenders are available for me, which lenders are not. And you can see that you can do the same on the mortgage search page. Just click on the edit here and see, okay, so if John applies by himself or if Kate applies together with John, perhaps the situation will be different. So it's also something that you can do. So if you have partners that owns together with your portfolio, perhaps it's worth to check if you apply with them to property, what will be the results. And of course, you can also change to company and then search. And when you apply as a company, limited company, the rates usually will be higher than if you apply as an individual. So you can see you go again to the areas of 3%, etc. I think
okay, well, I'm just mindful of the time. Just like to invite anybody with any questions to pop them on the chat. This has really just been a quick whiz around the Lendlord software to show you how all the different parts of it actually integrate together from the beginning of your property journey, which is when you're actually assessing deals, right through to when you've actually purchased a deal, right through to when you want to start collecting, monitoring the rent collection, compliance. It can all be done on the Lendlord platform. We do have a wide range of videos that explain all these different features. And we do invite you to jump across to Lendlord's YouTube channel, where you will find these videos, previous webinars, demos, and whatnot. Ada Torres just said we've missed out the pros and cons of buying a tenanted property. Actually, we covered that. It was selling a property. Which one did we do? I can't remember now. No, it was buying. So selling a tenanted property, again, the main thing for me is that you don't have a void up to the day of sale. Important to understand that tenants have what is known as a right to quiet enjoyment, and they are not obliged to allow viewings of your property if you're looking to sell it, and they're going to move on. So I think that's really important to understand that. Tenants have many different reasons for not allowing viewings. Could be they're a shift worker, they're worried about COVID, they've got a new baby, they're suffering a bereavement, whatever it might be. So you would not be allowed to undertake viewings in that tenanted property. And also, I think the other thing to bear in mind that when tenants are living in a property, you know, it may not show very well to somebody that is thinking of living there themselves. So to actually sell a tenanted property means that you've got your rental income up to the day of completion. And, you know, we know that it's typically taking 2 to 3 months to sell a property in the UK at the moment. I don't know why it's so slow. There's no reason for it to be, but it just is. I think conveyances have obviously been overloaded due to the stamp duty holiday, but typically it is 2 to 3 months to sell a property. So if you sold with vacant possession, that property would be empty through the sales process, and sales fall out of bed. So if a sale fell out after 3 or 4 months, you'd be right back to square one. You would be paying your mortgage if you have one, you'd be paying your council tax, you'd be paying standing utilities. Empty properties can be subject to asset theft and vandalism. So, you know, I'm actually a big fan of buying and selling tenanted properties, because it creates actually what I call a triple win. The buyer wins, the seller wins, and the tenant wins, because they can actually stay in their home. So it's definitely worth considering. I think a lot of people also think that if you sell a tenanted property, you need to sell at a discount. What we're hearing from our friends at Vesta is that there is such high demand that that's not really the case, and it could be a matter of 3 to 5% discount. When you factor in voids, council tax, etc., then you're probably not that much far off from if you sold it as vacant possession. So some agents will say to you, oh no, it's got to be sold as vacant possession, but that is not the case in my experience. There are many landlords looking to increase their portfolios, many landlords looking to sell. So there's a definite market there for buying and selling tenanted properties. Definitely worth considering the costs involved for both, and just adding them up using the deal analyzer to assess that. Anything to add on that one, Abraham?
No, on the tenanted, I think you covered all the benefits, and I think definitely something landlords should consider. And I think, Vanessa, we have one more topic. I'm not sure if we have time, like the compliance due dates. We can cover it now, or we can wait. What do you think to the next time?
I'm just mindful of the time. We do have another webinar on compliance, which we can direct you to. Suffice to say, we can just quickly discuss it, Abraham, in a couple of minutes. Compliance is hugely important in being a landlord. I'm very fond of saying there are over 170 government statutes and regulations that landlords have to adhere to in order to supply a safe and compliant home for your tenant. It's a legal responsibility, and if you don't and you are caught out, then the fines are can be very substantial, up to 30,000 in some cases and unlimited in others. Obviously, you want to provide a safe and compliant home for your tenant, because nobody ever wants to get the call that a tenant has died in your property because of your negligence. So compliance is not something to be skimped upon, or to think, oh, I'll cut corners here, there, and whatever. And the great thing about Lendlord is that you can use the compliance fields to set reminders of when certain events are due, whether you need to renew a safety certificate or something of that ilk. So it's very much a case of reducing risk by using the Lendlord compliance tool.
Yes, basically you just need to make sure that you put all the dates when you edit a property. The way I do it, I just switch to the due dates view, and there I can see all the dates on each property. I click edit, and then basically on each section you will have the date that is relevant to the section. So in the landlord insurance section, put the insurance end date here, and you will get a reminder to your email, and on the alerts drop down here. You can start in 3 months before, but you can set it up on from your settings page. Then again, do the same for the gas safety certificate, the electrical check, the EPC, and we also have other reminders on the property details field. So if you want to put, for instance, your midterm inspection date, so to get a reminder for that, you can put it as well. And then after you put all the dates, you have 3 places you can review them. One is the insights page. In the insights page, you can see the event, date. And you can also use our providers to place an order. But the most important thing is that you can see that there is something to do. You can add it to your calendar if you have a Google Calendar, and you will also receive an email notification when it comes to do it. And recently, by the way, we also added like the ability to add the rent review reminder. So you can, when on my tenants, when you edit the tenancy on the section of tenancy details, you can just put the rent review date and the frequency to review it annually, quarterly, every 2 years or 5 years, and you will also receive a reminder for that in an email.
That's a very useful new feature.
Yes.
And it's always worth just checking comparables in your area on a fairly regular basis, just so you understand what the market is doing in your area. My personal policy isn't to raise rents during a tenancy, certainly in the first 2 or 3 years. Some landlords like to write in a rent increase in line with inflation into their tenancy agreement. It's really down to your own personal style of how you do how you want to run your business. And that's one of the great things about property, is that you can customize it to how you want to run your business. You know, I'm very much of the kind of school of thought that if you have a good tenant that's paying the rent on time, that is looking after the property, you don't really want to rock the boat, certainly for 2 or 3 years, and then perhaps review it after that. And if there has been a significant rental increase in the area, it obviously does make business sense to increase the rent, but I would never increase it by the full market amount. I would always reduce it slightly from that to keep it attractive to my good tenants. Oh, Aditoro, you must forgive me, I didn't read your question properly. Aditoro says that I didn't discuss the cons of buying a tenanted property, and you're absolutely right, I didn't, because I'm struggling to think of any. I don't know if anybody has any thoughts on this, and pop it on the chat for me. I can't really think of any bad things about buying a tenanted property, because, as I said, you can actually check the payment history of the tenant. You can see how the tenant is living in the property. You can perhaps, you know, you can check whether they've got a pet there, for instance, if the pet's damaging the property. If anybody's got any cons of buying a tenanted property, pop them on the chat, because I know there's some experienced landlords on here that may have a view that I haven't really considered. But all in all, as I said, I think buying and selling tenanted properties is a good thing, particularly in the market that we're in, where we have amplified risk through tenant profiles. So, thank you, Aditoro. I did answer it. I got there in the end. Okay, so yes, we're just finishing now. Any final words, Abraham?
Yeah, we just, you know, so many things that we still can demonstrate, but I think for today, I think we did, it was very good, like to see mainly the deal analyzer benefits. For our users, feel free to send us the requests, questions, suggestions on the chat. For people that didn't sign up yet, just sign up free. Nick can put the link to sign up on the chat, and you can also schedule one-on-one training session with me. Nick will put the Calendly link as well. Yeah, so we love feedback, so feel free to send us more feedback and help us to keep enhancing the platform.
Yep. Peter says, brilliant bit of software. That's so wonderful. Music to our ears, Peter. Thank you very much for your comment and your feedback. Very much valued. I'll just pop the link for the Property Investor Show again, 15th and 16th of October, London, Excel. Really great, valuable day out for anybody with an interest in property, whether you're a newbie or seasoned landlord. And please do come along to the Lendlord stand and meet myself and Avram and Nick and the Lendlord team. Ash says, thank you. There's so many features he needs to start using. Great, Ash. Glad you feel that. And as I mentioned, also, I'm doing my Holiday Lets panel, which is available to register now. I can pop the link on there if you like as well. Do register because I think it's going to be a good one. We're going to be discussing the pros and cons of Holiday Lets. It should be, I've got some very good guests on there. It should be a good one. Let me just quickly find that link for you as well, so you can register for my panel. Come and support me, because I'm always in these, in the back rooms at the Excel. I'm always in the seminar rooms, so it really means a lot to me when people come along and support my seminars. So I'll pop the link there if you want to register for your free ticket. Okay, everybody, thank you for sticking with us throughout this past hour. We hope you've got some value from it. There is so much to talk about. Everything that we do is to really, encourage you to explore the software, see how it can benefit you, find the way that you want to use it, because everybody's going to have their own ways of using it. There is no right and wrong. Just make sure that your inputs are correct, and then your outputs will be accurate as well. So thank you for joining us. This will be posted on Property Tribes probably by tomorrow lunchtime. If you want to review anything we've discussed, or if you've got any questions, please always ask them there, and Avram will be on hand to answer them. Thank you everybody for your lovely comments coming in on the chat, and we wish you a very enjoyable rest of your evening. Thank you for spending time with us here at Lendlord and Property Tribes.
Thank you all. Thank you, Vanessa. Bye-bye.
Bye.